Happiness isn't always about what we do. Sometimes it's about what we choose not to do. Over the years, I've realised that avoiding certain behaviours have helped me live with more peace and joy. Today, I want to share 5 things that I avoid to stay happy and why they matter. Along the way, I'll be sharing some personal experiences and stories to help illustrate why these choices have made such a difference in my life. Also, stick around until the end, and I'll share a little about what we made in the video. Before I get started though, I just want to take a moment to say a big, heartfelt thank you to the 17 people who have subscribed to my channel. It genuinely means so much to me that you've chosen to be here, sharing your time and supporting this space. So thank you so much. Knowing that you're here makes all the difference. Thank you. Right, now then, let's dive into it. The first one is avoiding unwholesome speech. Words are powerful, aren't they? They can connect us, heal us, or even brighten our day. But they can also cause harm, even unintentionally, and tear somebody down. That's why I try to avoid unwholesome speech. This includes lying, gossiping, harsh words, or turning people against each other. When I was 15, I worked as a waitress. One time, I overheard 2 colleagues speaking about me behind my back. It wasn't just the words that hurt, it was knowing they didn't think that I'd find out. It made me question myself, and it honestly chipped away at my self-esteem for years. That experience taught me how damaging unkind words can be, even when the person isn't around to hear them. I don't always get it right. Sometimes I'll catch myself mid-sentence and think, why am I even saying this? But I think it's a step in the right direction I want to go in nonetheless. Now, there's a story about a young girl who gossiped about her neighbour. To teach her a lesson, her grandmother asked her to cut open a feather pillow and scatter the feathers in the wind. Her grandmother then asked her to collect all the feathers. The girl couldn't. The grandmother said, "That's what happens when you spread words. You can never take them back." So I now ask myself, am I saying this to help or to harm? I try to put the words I'm about to say through three filters. That is when I remember and I have enough patience to. The 3 filters are, is this true? Is this useful? Is this kind? If it doesn't pass through all 3, maybe it doesn't actually need to be said. What would the world look like if everyone spoke with kindness and honesty? What could you do to make your words a source of joy? Number 2, avoid killing or harming life. This one is pretty straightforward. I try to avoid harming living beings, whether that's directly or indirectly. It's just a simple idea that we all share the same desire to be safe, to live without fear. When I look at animals, it's so obvious. They're constantly on guard. Birds take flight at the smallest sound. Sheep move away if you get too close. Cats are called scaredy cats for a reason. They're just trying to survive, and I don't want to add to that fear. I think choosing compassion, even in small ways, can ripple out into the world. Once, a lion was trapped. This is a story, by the way. Once a lion was trapped in a hunter's net. A bird that the lion had spared a few hours earlier flew to his rescue, pecking at the ropes until he was free. That simple act of kindness that the lion performed earlier came full circle. So I asked myself, what kind of world do I want to create? One of harm or one of care? After all, the world we shape is the one we inhabit. How does it feel when you're kind, even to the smallest creatures? Could choosing compassion help you find more peace? For number 3, is avoid mistreating property. Treating others' belonging with care shows respect. I avoid taking, damaging, or being careless with others' things that aren't mine. I remember borrowing a book once and I accidentally spilled some tea on it. Of course, it wasn't the end of the world, but I still felt awful handing it back. That little moment made me more aware of how I treat things, whether they belong to me or someone else. It's not about being overly cautious though, or afraid to use things. It's about showing care. And honestly, it feels good to know you've treated someone else's belongings with the same respect that you'd want for your own. There's a story of 3 brothers who inherited a tree each. The first brother chopped his down for wood. The second picked all the fruits greedily, but the third watered and cared for his tree. Over time, his tree flourished and multiplied, providing shade, fruit, and wood for years. This story reminds me that the way we treat things can have lasting effects. So I think, do I treat things with gratitude and responsibility, or do I take them for granted? How would you feel if someone mistreated something precious to you? Could being mindful of others' belongings lead to stronger relationships in a world full of fickle ones? For the 4th thing, it is, don't cheat. Cheating doesn't have to be some grand, obvious thing. It can show up in small ways, cutting corners, taking more than you share, or being dishonest in ways that seem harmless at the time. I've seen how it plays out in the long run too. In a previous job, I watched someone take credit for someone else's work. It seemed like they'd won at first, but eventually the truth came out. It hurt the team and ruined trust, and in the end, it wasn't worth it. That experience made me think about what I'm building in my own life. Am I creating something real and solid, or am I chasing shortcuts that won't hold up? It's not about being perfect, but about trying to move through life in a way that feels genuine. And I'm trying my best, though I have to admit, talking into this mic does feel a bit strange. Long ago, another story by the way, a dishonest merchant sold water, diluted milk, to a farmer. One day, the merchant took his boat out again into the river, collecting more water to dilute his milk with. But this time, his boat sank. He said, "The river is taking back the water I stole." From then on, he vowed to live honestly. I remind myself, what am I building? Something genuine or something temporary? Have you ever lost trust in someone because they cheated? How would life change if everyone acted with integrity? Now for number 5. Don't take intoxicants. This one might surprise you, but avoiding intoxicants has made me like myself more. Substances like alcohol or drugs can cloud judgment and lead to poor judgment, of course, and poor decisions. Now, for an example, and this one's quite personal, I had a close friend once of 8 years. We went on holiday together, and they decided to have a few drinks. They ended up behaving in ways they wouldn't have if they were sober, and they deeply regretted it the next day. Even though they apologised, it couldn't undo the damage. And unfortunately, it changed our friendship forever. That experience stuck with me. I realised that staying clear-headed helps me show up it helps me show up as my best self, for my family, for my relationships, and for the kind of life I want to create. Again, a story. A lantern keeper once drank too much and forgot to light the village lanterns. That night, a traveller fell into a ditch and was injured. The keeper realised his actions affected not just himself, but others, and he vowed to stay clear-headed. So, I asked myself, do I want to dim my light, or do I want to shine brightly? What could you achieve if you were always clear-minded and focused? How would that bring you closer to happiness? Now, these haven't made my life perfect, but they've made it better, more intentional, more peaceful, and more in line with the person I want to be. It's not about getting it right every time, it's about trying, reflecting, and adjusting as we go. I invite you to reflect on these points. How do your actions shape your happiness? What small changes could you make today to live more peacefully? Now to go behind the scenes. In this video, my partner took the spotlight as the star of the day while I stayed behind the camera with the baby to capture it all. It started off by trimming the blackberry hedges in our garden. This spot will soon be concreted up to make space for a woodshed, so the overgrown vines had to go. After cutting them down, the vines were gathered and added to our compost, where they'll eventually break down and enrich the soil. While he worked, Baby and I stayed close by, keeping him company and enjoying the fresh air together. Later, attention turned to the hawthorn trees in the garden. My partner carefully picked some of the bright red berries, but left most of them on the tree to ensure there's plenty left for the wildlife to eat through these colder months. Once the hawthorn was collected, he sat down to separate the berries from the branches. Baby and I stayed with him, of course, watching as he patiently worked. Finally, we used the berries to make a batch of hawthorn ketchup, sweetened naturally with date syrup. This time I stayed behind the scenes, capturing the process as he led the way. I hope you enjoyed this glimpse into our day, and thank you for joining us, and I hope to see you again soon. If you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. My last video only got 1 like from someone I knew personally, which, thank you by the way, but it made me laugh and wonder if it didn't quite land with the others. Every bit of support helps me grow and improve, so thank you in advance. And if you don't like it, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your feedback means a lot and helps me create better content. And for those who have been here during the short journey that I've been on YouTube, you might notice that this video is quite similar to one I shared a couple of weeks ago. But this time, it's the opposite, focusing on the 5 things I try to avoid for happiness rather than the things I actively do. I hope this perspective brings something new to the conversation. And if you haven't seen the 5 things I do to stay happy, it's actually 7 things. I'll link it in the description below. Thank you so much, and I'll see you again soon.